The following presentation is brought to you by the Realm Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Vixens Who Rule. I, for the very first time, am meeting Miss Kelly Klein, currently working in Ring of Honor. We're going to talk about that, but there's a lot of other things I want to talk about with Miss Klein. Kelly, how are you today?
I'm doing great today.
Now, Kelly, I don't know you too well, but I'm hoping that our mutual friend, Allie Parker, put me over the like in spades.
Yes, she did. I actually did check in with her and ask about you, and she said that she loved it. She had a great time and to have fun. So I said, okay.
Now, Kelly, I want. Listen, here's what I read as much as I could on you. Here's one thing I read about you. You know, you're an absolute straight shooter with a little bit of an attitude, which I love because that's how I am. So even though we don't know each other very well, can I shoot straight with you right off the bat?
Might as well.
Okay, let me shoot. Listen, I got to tell you about my crack staff. You know, the crack staff at the brand consists of two people. It's myself and my tag team partner. The guy's name is Jeff Lane. Okay, now if you can imagine Jeff Lane, this is a 37-year-old man. You know, he's not married, spends a lot of time at home, but very creative, very nice guy, very, very intelligent, right? So part of his job is he's supposed to find me guests. So I'm like, Jeff, go out there, find me guests. So I think what happened was you wound up following him on Twitter. So he comes back to me and he's like, okay, you know, you got to interview Kelly, you got to interview Kelly, you got to interview Kelly. So now I'm getting ready to interview you. And I said, okay, Jeff, you got to give me some background on Kelly. What do you know about Kelly? He goes, what do you mean, what do I know? I'm like, I never met her. I don't know too much about her. You got to give me some information. Kelly, do you know what Jeff Lane said to me? He goes, well, he goes, I don't know too much about Kelly. I wanted you to interview her because she's smoking hot and has an unbelievable body. This is what I'm dealing with, Kelly. This is the staff that I'm dealing with. That answers the
question, though, because I was going to ask you, so what made you guys want to interview me? So there we go.
There you go, Jeff. I mean, can you get any more shallow than that?
I mean, that's part of the business, so.
Part of the business. But, Kelly, I'm going to be honest with you. I went through everything to get as much as I could, and there are a lot of things that interest me. Kelly, you got to understand one thing, though. This is like a podcast channel based on wrestling. But, like, I try to not talk about wrestling. Like, wrestling, I'm not excited by wrestling these days. I'm talking about wrestling in general. It's a lot different from what I grew up in and what I know. I'm a fan of people. I like talking to people, learning about people. That's kind of what I thrive on these days. And there's a lot here to talk to you about. The first obvious question to me is, I'm reading that there's so many discrepancies about you. When you go to all these sites, it's unbelievable. First of all, like there's a 50-pound discrepancy. Right. From website to website to website, you put on 50 pounds somehow, okay?
Right.
Then I'm reading that, you're from Hamilton, St. Louis, and then the next article is telling me that, you're a native of Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay, so we'll get to that in a second. But the first thing, obviously, that jumps off the page of me, slapped me across the face was you attended high school in South Africa. Now, whether you were from St. Louis or whether you were from Cincinnati, how the heck do you wind up in South Africa?
I've been getting that question recently, and I didn't realize that was out there until within this past year.
Kelly, listen, you got to cover me. I got to give you the ground rules up front. You got to cover me. when I ask you a question, you can never say, I get asked that a lot, or that somebody else asked me that. You got to make it as if, like, this is the first time somebody's asked, like, oh, my God, that's a great question. Because, listen, I like to compare myself to the Oprah of podcasting, so I can't ask you a question somebody else might have already asked you.
Well, I guarantee about every question you ask, since you already covered that it's not going to be about wrestling, that's going to be the case.
Okay. So tell me about this South Africa. I mean, this jumps off the page.
So you remember MySpace?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Back in the days of MySpace was when I first started wrestling and training, and somebody who was another wrestler and was kind of helping get me started was helping me with the gimmick stuff. And that individual actually edited, and I didn't realize this, had edited in my bio on MySpace to say that I attended Rainbow High School because my colors were rainbows. So now it's floating around out there that I lived in South Africa, where I guess that person must have just done a Google search and said, oh, I'll say she went to Rainbow High School. And so that's just not true.
Kelly, right off the bat, you're telling me that you swerved the great Vince Russo, and we don't even know each other.
I did.
All right, I give you credit.
Where we're going to start.
I give you, but now I have to ask you this. So is it St. Louis or is it Cincinnati?
I was born and grew up in Cincinnati. I did live in St. Louis, and the reason I called that my hometown when I started wrestling was that's where I was living when I started training and started wrestling. So I did eventually move back to Cincinnati. So I'm currently living and training in the Cincinnati area, a suburb, which is Hamilton, where I'm actually physically going to in-ring training.
You know what? I honestly believe at one point my sister lived in Hamilton, Ohio. I'm not sure about that. I don't talk to her much. She's a ham and egg. Kelly, I have to ask you this. At what age did you move to St. Louis?
I was 18.
Okay, because the reason why I'm asking that is St. Louis is so history rich when it comes to professional wrestling. But you must have grew up in wrestling then when you were in Cincinnati.
Well, I actually didn't grow up in wrestling at all. I was not allowed to watch wrestling growing up. I remember very distinctly this one morning. It was a Sunday morning when I had to be pretty young, but we were, my whole family, getting ready for church, and my dad and I think maybe my older sister and I had turned on the TV while we were waiting for my mom to I think she must have been getting my little sister ready because she was a baby. And we were watching wrestling Sunday morning. And I remember my mom walking in the room going, what the heck are you watching? And telling my dad, don't turn that off. They're not allowed to watch that. So that was the end of that. But it wasn't long after that where that wrestling product wasn't really even available on TV. I didn't grow up with cable TV or anything like that. So after that, it was just a non-issue. I was not exposed to it at all. Literally the first time I was truly exposed to it was when I first went to an independent wrestling show, which was Heartland Wrestling Association. And I immediately... I was there, for a couple of hours during the show. I knew that I had to do this. It wasn't, oh, this is really cool, I want to come to more shows and be a fan. My first reaction, the first show was, okay, how do I get in that ring? How do I do this?
And you're how old at the time?
I would have been 19, I think.
But, let me ask you this, though, Kelly. There's a couple of things that I'm seeing about you. Obviously, what I'm reading about your background is you were obviously an athlete in high school.
Yes.
And one thing you talk about, and I got to tell you, there are two things. First of all, I love women's wrestling. I love tough women, women that can handle themselves. I love that. But with that being said, there are two other things I love when it comes to women in sports. I love women's fast pitch softball. I absolutely love it. And I'm not saying that because I know you're involved in this. I sit there and I watch it, and the talent of the girls, like, blows me away. So you played some fast-pitch softball in high school?
Yes, I did.
Oh.
I actually continued through college. In high school, I did play for the school a little bit, but I primarily was playing in select teams and tournament teams. So we would specifically form a team that our goal was to travel and compete in tournaments and just go and win these tournaments.
So you first and foremost, before you ever even saw that show, you're an athlete through and through. Yes. That was always a big part of your life, working out, you're getting to the gym, and, that was always a big part of your life.
It was. One thing that I think is important for a lot of people to realize is that for me, I was always an athlete. I was always pursuing these goals to be the best athlete I could be. But when I was especially in elementary school, high school, and college, I didn't know a lot about fitness and nutrition. I knew what I could find in magazines. I knew what my sometimes ill-advised coaches would tell me. So I was really putting forth a lot of effort and spending a lot of time and just kind of banging my head against the wall, not getting really good results. And so it wasn't until the last few years that I started to find what was really working for me and start to kind of find better resources and get better educated on what really could be effective.
Kelly, at around 12:30 last night, I had a piece of sausage pizza. Could we agree that that's not a good thing?
I could agree with that.
Right. Kelly, I have to ask you this. I was telling you, like, this is unbelievable to me. I told you I was seeing this huge weight discrepancy online, according to you, and I'm going to say what it was. It was anywhere from 150 to 200 pounds. Then I'm looking at pictures of you, and I'm saying 200 pounds where? I mean, you obviously you have the body of an athlete. You look to be in great shape. You must be tall, I would take it.
I'm like 5'6", 5'6" something.
Where did they get the 150 to 200? Where does that come from?
Well, I do weigh around 160 right now. Is kind of where I'm sitting.
But it's got to be from the pictures I see of you. It's got to be pure muscle.
It's pretty solid. I'm working on getting it more solid. That's also, why I'm trying to keep myself from really looking at the scale and looking at the numbers, because while I'm continuing to work on leaning out, I'm also working on building muscle. So I have to remember, and kind of keep myself grounded in the fact that I may not, see the numbers drop on the scale, but I just have to pay attention to, how I look, how things fit, and, how my workouts are going. And I'm actually noticing a lot of things when I go to training and I'm getting in the ring and I'm attempting things that are things I've always done, but things that are so much easier now, where I'll do a leapfrog and I'll go kind of flying because I don't realize just the changes in my body composition, how that affects how I move. So I've had a couple of times recently where I've surprised myself. I've done a nip up and I've gone and launched myself because I put more force than I realized and things like that, just because of those changes in my composition and my strength.
So it's fair to say you have not had a slice of sausage pizza at 12:30 at night anytime recently?
Not too recently. I did have some pizza. It has to be a few weeks ago, but it actually made me feel so sick that
unbelievable. God bless you.
I was like, all right, done.
God bless. Now, Kelly, I know you're married. You're married to a worker, and his working name is Kyle Craven, and he looks to be in pretty good shape as well. I'm curious about that. How is it like? How does it work with a husband and wife when they're both really into fitness. I mean, I have to ask you this. Is it a constant pushing of each other? Does sometime, one get jealous of the other? I mean, does it turn into a competition? I mean, how is it when you have two people that are in great condition, both athletes, but, married to each other? Is that a pro or is that a con?
Well, in that case, it didn't work. We are no longer married.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
That's okay. I learned a lot. And it's been about 2 years since I actually had moved out, and it took about 6 months to kind of get the divorce finalized. But it is for the best now. I'm in a much better place for myself. So, and that was something where I don't think that I would say it had anything to do with the fact that we both wrestled or both were into fitness. There were a lot of other things that we just weren't compatible.
Well, you were also, too, I mean, you're very young. You're young, so, I mean, maybe age had to do with it. The only reason I say that, Kelly, is I got married when I was 22 years old. I've been married for 32 years, but back then it was just a totally, different time. So I can understand. But wrestling, working in the same industry, it did not have a burden on the relationship.
I think that in that relationship it did, only because of other factors. One thing I was actually just thinking about today was the fact that I remember, and this was something maybe it would have been good to realize before we got married, and maybe I would have acted on it, I don't know. But he did not like and did not want to watch any movies or shows where there was a strong female character or a strong female hero, because the way he put it was that was not believable.
Oh,
and
really? Wow.
You have to think maybe that's not a good fit for me.
Yeah, no. See, that's the thing. I'm the complete opposite. I eat that stuff up. My weakness is, Kelly, I love, when I was growing up, and I still do to this day, I love female rockers. You know what I mean? Like the Joan Jetts and the Pat Benetars of the world that had such freaking attitude. Lita Ford. Are there women like that inspired you, strong women? Because I know, we're going to talk about this too. I know you're big into entertainment. And I read your resume. I saw all the singing and the dancing. And I'm going to ask you to sing a little on this show later on. We're going to get to that. But who were some, you talk about strong female presence. Who were some that you looked up to growing up? And even now?
Well, a lot of the strong women in my life were really in my life. I had an amazing dance teacher that I remember just being a really, she was very independent, driven, energetic, positive person. And I mean, she was someone who I never remember seeing her upset or angry. Just she took everything in stride, and she was always just full of life. And she's...
Kelly, I got to stop right there before you go on, and I want to hear the rest of the influence. But listen, I have ADD, so when you say something, if I don't ask you it right away, I'll forget. So
okay.
I have to ask you. Listen, you're not going to believe this, and I had a big conversation about this with somebody not too long ago. I'm a big fan of the Dance Moms. You watch Dance Moms, Abby Lee? I have to ask you this because me and my wife disagree, and I'm going to ask you because you got experience in this. My wife thinks the Abby Lee's really tough on those girls, and I tell my wife all the time I disagree. I think when those girls are older, they're going to realize what Abby Lee and what this teacher did for her, driving them over and wanting them to be the best that they could be. You see the little girls crying now and their mothers throw fits, the whole 9 yards. But I think when those girls reach, say, your age, they're going to realize, you know what? Now I understand. What do you think about that? I mean, that you watched the show, that you went through a similar background. Is a teacher at a young age too tough, or do you appreciate that later on in life?
Well, I think that, first of all, with Abby Lee, I already know that I don't see their 24/7 interaction, but I see things when I watch that show where the little girls hold her hand and hug her, and you can see that they love her. And if she was just yelling and mean, and that was 100% of what she offered all of the time, they wouldn't interact with her that way. But that's just what they're showing us more of, and they're not showing us when she is tender and loving to them. And as far as that portion of it, when she is hard on them and she is telling them those things, that is going to help them, because if she doesn't, then they're going to go out in the world and someone is either going to tell them that, and it's not going to be someone who cares for them, or someone won't tell them that, they just won't get a job. And if you want to be successful in anything, that's what your coach is there for. They are there to tell you what you're doing wrong and help you fix it. Because if they don't, then you're not going to be successful. And that is the person who does take the time and does care about you being successful, and they want to give you those tools. So, I train with Les Thatcher, and I told him one day recently, I said, I was watching Abby Lee and she said something that I swear I've heard you say the exact same thing. And he kind of laughed and he said, well, I can't remember if he thought that he or Abby were tougher on people, but I think he understood what I meant with the comparison, because I've had instances where somebody will see Les and myself interact with each other, and they'll hear things that he says to me or the way he phrases it, and they think, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that to her. That was so mean. And to me, I'm like, no, I would rather him tell me that looked like garbage so I can fix it, instead of letting me go to a tryout or go to a show and do that in front of a bunch of people where you can't take it back. And then all of those people are like, wow, that was awful, because I can't see myself, but he can, and he can fix it. And I'm in a situation where I have the opportunity to fix it. So then I can go out and put my best foot forward.
Yeah, what's funny about that, and I swear, I didn't know what we were going to talk about with 22 minutes in, and I'm all over the place with you here, and I still got a bunch of stuff I want to ask you. You know what's funny about that, and you'll appreciate this, I'm very good friends with Bill DeMott, and I worked with Bill DeMott at WCW, and then he became a trainer, at the facility at WWE, and I also worked with young athletes, in early 20s, that there was a sense of entitlement. So, like, the minute I knew Bill DeMott's old school mentality and the entitlement of these young kids going through that facility, I knew you were going to get this. And I'm going to tell you, those young kids later on in life, they're going to appreciate Bill DeMott. When they're going to learn the hard way, we're going to have to, fight and scratch for every single thing we get. Nothing is going to be handed to us. So that's why, like, when you throw the name Les Thatcher out, I know what kind of an education you're getting, and it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be the best education. But I didn't want to interrupt you. Give me some of the other female influences in your life.
One of my favorite women is Maya Angelou, and just because of a lot of her writings, that's somebody that has always really resonated with me. One of my favorite quotes is something that she said, and I think it is so perfect for, it's really perfect for everyone for life, but particularly for someone who is an entertainer. She talks about that people will not remember what you said and they won't remember what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I just always remember and has always really stuck with me. So
wow. That's a great comment, because I got to tell you, I'm sitting there, and I had to watch the Survivor Series last night for 3 hours. And one of my comments when I walked away was, I watched a 3-hour pay-per-view, and for the entire 3 hours, I felt no emotion. There was no emotion. And that is so spot on that you say that. But I also think, Kelly, you understand that and you embrace it, but I think a lot of that might come from your entertainment background. Entertainment is all about drawing emotion from people and making people, care about you. So I think that's why that comment, hits so close to home, because I think that's a big part of what's missing in wrestling today. And we could talk about that in a minute, but I want to get back to, who else influenced you.
I would say probably I always think about things, and this is another situation where later in life you kind of appreciate things, but there are all these moments in my life where my mother influenced me, and she said something or did something where now I'll vividly remember a conversation that I had with her when I was 5 years old. And that just shows me how meaningful that was in kind of shaping who I was, that I would remember those moments like that. So I've got a lot of those with my mom. And, I find there's that phrase like, I opened my mouth and my mother came out kind of thing as you get older and you start to be like, oh, did I just say that? But I do. And it's not a bad thing. I think that, I learned a lot from her, and she was somebody who drove me to be the best that I could, she and my father both, and also did everything they could to give me the resources to do that, so that I could have the means to do the best that I could, and to find a way to improve and find kind of where my heart was and what I wanted to do and what I was good at. So she's definitely up there. And then, those are really the main ones that come to mind are Susan Mosier, my dance teacher, Maya Angelou, and my mom.
Yeah. Do you still live close by your parents?
I actually do live near them now. I lived kind of further away from them for a while, but now I'm like 15 minutes. So it's, it's not like right next door, but it's close enough that I can see them and go visit.
I got to ask you your opinion on this too while we're on the subject, because we talked about tough women and strong women. I love women in athletics. I like physical athletics. Like I can't get into the Olympics and watch gymnasts. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about competitiveness. The team type of environment. Kelly, have you ever watched this LFL?
No. This is the football one, right?
The women football. I've
seen a little.
Yeah, here's the deal. It's called the Legends Football League. I think it used to be, I think it used to be called the Lingerie Football League.
Right.
I don't know if you know her, and I'm sure you know of her, but Rebel from TNA, who I think very highly of, she used to play in this league. Yeah. Right? I swear, man, I am so hooked on this, and this is why I'm hooked on it. I'll tell you why. I got to be honest with you, Kelly. I'm 54 years old. I've been married for 32 years. I got 3 old kids, so I don't watch something like this and get off on it because the girls are scantily clad. That's not who I am. It blows me away with these girls because the fact that they're wearing practically next to nothing and very little padding, okay, they freaking kill each other. On this, they literally kill each other. And here's the thing that blows me away. When you watch the NFL, every other play, somebody's getting hurt. We got to go to a commercial break. They got to help them off the field. And these guys are so heavily padded. These girls are playing with practically nothing. They have nothing from the waist down. Nothing. And are killing each other out on the field. And not only that, nobody is ever getting hurt. And to me, like that, I sit back, and that just absolutely amazes me.
I do know Rebel very well. She and I have trained together a little bit, and we've wrestled each other before. And she is somebody who I really appreciate her work ethic. She is a hard worker. So that makes sense, that I know she was the youngest ever Dallas cheerleader, Dallas Cowboys cheerleader, to make the team. And then she did that LFL. Now she's doing wrestling, and she works hard. And I think that in some cases, women in athletics, whether it's the LFL, wrestling, fast pitch softball, whatever it is, we have to work harder and we have to suck it up more, because people are already waiting for that first tier, and we can't give it to them.
Kelly, that's amazing. I don't mean to interrupt you. That's amazing that you say that, because I never looked at it that way. But it's amazing to me that you said that, because now I'm thinking about what you just said. In all my years working with all these women, I never saw one tear, that is unbelievable. Because I had this guy on the other day, I think Chris Dickinson. He was the guy that flung the Kimberly,
right.
And like I had to hear his side of the story, and like I had to point out to him, bro, women they're not built that way. You can't toss a woman like you toss a guy. They're just not built that way. So, listen, girls there's certain things they can and cannot do because of the way they're built. But my God, when you put it that way, they want to see the first tier. And now I sit back and I'm like, for all the times I saw those girls beat the crap out of each other, I never saw one tier. That's unbelievable.
I had a situation in training, and this is just one situation, but it happens frequently, where I'm the only female that's training with all of these guys. And I remember one time where myself and one of the guys were working on something, and we both collided. And we stopped, and he started kind of holding his head, and I just, I got up and I was ready to go. And everybody said, "Oh my gosh, did he hit his head on your knee?" And I said, "No, he hit his head on my head." And they stopped and they went, "Well, why is he acting like he's more hurt than you?" And I said, I don't know, because I'm ready to go. But I think we were both probably in the same amount of pain, but I don't have the time or the luxury for that, because that's what people are looking for, and not in my training scenario. I'm really in a good group of people who are very supportive, but it's just something that you develop as a female athlete and a female competitor, that you've got to be tougher than the guys, you've got to be stronger than the guys, you've got to be better than the guys, just to be taken seriously.
Kelly, with that being said, I want to ask you this question, because, again, everything I'm reading about you, it really looks like there's an extensive love of entertainment. And I looked at your resume. I saw all the things, the singing, the dancing, the acting. I saw all that. Now, I would have to assume that, that love was kind of built, throughout your teen years as you went to high school. Is that when you kind of decided take wrestling out of the equation, because you said it was the first time you went to an indie show? Up until that point, though, is that where your love for the field of entertainment came about?
I always loved, I loved singing from when I was very young. I had a parallel journey with entertainment and athletics, and I loved both equally. I remember when I was 8 years old, and I had already decided what high school I wanted to go to, because I knew they had a good theater department and a good art department, and I wanted to be a part of that. So I was doing art lessons when I was little, and I was taking piano lessons for a little while, but I didn't love that. Just the lessons and the structure was a struggle for me. But music itself, I love. So I participated in a lot of theater, music, and as well as athletics my whole life. And then I remember in high school, there was a situation where I was forced to choose between theater and softball. At the time, I chose theater because I had already committed. I think we were 2 weeks away from opening a show that I was one of the leads in, and I told the athletic department, "Look, I've already committed to them. it's too late to ask them to replace me and put them in that position. So I have to complete this. And then there was and I was still doing my competitive softball outside of there. So I was still able to play. I just wasn't going to play for the school if they were going to ask me basically to renege on an arrangement I had already made. So then when it was time to start looking at colleges, I had that equal love for softball and theater. And I was thinking about choosing colleges based on, do I want to make softball my priority and go try to get into University of Georgia, or do I want to make theater my priority and choose a school based on their theater department? And the route I ended up going was to pursue theater. But I did end up playing a little bit of softball while I was there.
See, but here's my question to you, Kelly. You got a love of the theater, and I would assume you still have that love of the theater. I don't think because you're wrestling now that went away. Like, we love several things. But here's the question I want to ask you. Wrestling's not softball. You know, it's two completely different animals. And with the love of the theater, and, you know, again, you know, it seems like you're a talented singer and dancer, and you can do all these things. But now that you're in the arena of wrestling, do you ever think about, oh, my God, there's a real chance of me getting hurt here? This is very, very physical. There's a real chance of me getting hurt here where down the line I might not be able to pursue a career in entertainment if that's the field I wish to go back in. Do you ever think about that? Because, you know, like I said, you know, softball's competitive, but it's not nearly as physical as wrestling. Do you ever think about, you know, your health and wrestling maybe limiting you to what you might be able to do in the future?
I don't think that is the case. I have thought about it, particularly because I remember I had a match, I guess over a year ago, where I ended up getting my eyebrow split open. And I remember my dad, you know, kind of being really upset by that and thinking, you know, this wrestling is, you know, really dangerous. And now he was one of my softball coaches throughout my life. And I said, Dad, I've been more injured playing softball than I ever have wrestling. And that's the truth. And when I coached softball, I had some girls, I was coaching JV, one of the varsity girls broke her leg at the beginning of the season. One of my girls got a concussion. And, you know, those were things that took them out of play for a while. And when I was in college, I had an injury that took me out of play for a couple of weeks. So I feel like there is definitely the potential for injury in softball, just as there is in wrestling. In wrestling, I think that some of it is maybe there are more variables that you can control and anticipate in wrestling. In softball, well, as a coach, I can sometimes look at a batter and I can tell you before she swings where she's going to hit the ball. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can anticipate everything about, you know, is that ball going to come flying at me and hit me in the leg or hit me in the head, which I've seen happen to people. But when I first was interested in wrestling, the first show I went to see was because I had to make that choice in the past between softball and theater, and I didn't want to have to choose. I didn't want to have to choose between being physical and competitive and athletic and being artistic and entertaining and creative and improvising. I wanted to be able to do all of those things. So when I saw that first show, that was the first time where I saw something and I said, wait, I can do everything that I love and that I'm good at, and I can do it all at the same time and not have to, you know, choose one or the other again.
We're going to talk. That's a perfect segue to where I want to go because you're leading me right into something, and I think you're the perfect one to talk about this. But before I get to that, my ADD's kicking in, so I got to bring something else up. I want to get your spin on this. You know, like with my resume, I've worked with just about everybody, okay? And I got to be honest with you. I want to see why you think this is. I never asked a female this question before. So many of the guys I work with and so many guys I interview on this show, listen, when they're knucklehead jocks Like, you just know it. Like, you get people that are off the chart intelligent, like a guy like a Matt Morgan, comes to mind. You get guys that are off the chart intelligent, but then again, you'll get the other guys that are just knucklehead jocks, okay? You know what the funny thing is? Of all the girls I've worked with, all the girls I've interviewed on this show, not one of them come across that way. Like you would expect, listen, if a woman becomes a professional wrestler, the first thing you're expecting off the bat, you want to talk about stereotyping, is she was a tomboy growing up. That's the first thing. The second thing, she was a jock. Like, these are all the stereotypes. But like, every single one of you that I talk to comes across so intelligent and so well spoken. I mean, from you to Gail Kim to Velvet. I mean, to everybody. Why is that? Why is there like such a level of intelligence with female wrestlers when they're really getting into something very, very physical? And like with the guys, it's kind of 50-50. You'll get the intelligent guy, then you'll get the muscle head jock. But it seems with you girls, like, everything is thought out. You got a game plan. You know what you're doing. Why do you think that is?
I think it's necessary. I think that women who advance in wrestling have to be very savvy and very aware, because if we're not, it would be very easy just to get chewed up and spit out. And I think that there certainly have to be some women who attempt to pursue wrestling who don't have that philosophy or that outlook. And I think because of that, they just don't get far. So you won't see them and you won't speak to them because, as I mentioned before, it's already stacked with challenges and obstacles for women. So nobody's going to take a girl's hand and lead her through those if she is not capable of doing it herself. I've even used the example before because people always say, well, what if somebody gets a position because of nepotism or because they're someone's buddy or this or that, and it doesn't have anything to do with their skill or their intelligence or whatever it is. And honestly, if they get an opportunity because of that, they still have to have the ability to keep that spot. So if they get an opportunity for the wrong reasons, but they can't back it up with the right skills and work ethic, determination, savvy, whatever it is, then they're not going to stay there.
Kelly, you know what you're pointing out here that is so, man, you're making me think about a lot of things that I never really thought about before. And I'll tell you why. Because this is what you're saying, and it makes all the sense in the world. To be a woman in the business, not only do you physically have to be strong, but you also have to be just as mentally strong and just as smart. And as you said, man, I can't fathom the pressure of having to think about every word you say and the way you act and who you go out to dinner with and what you say to one of the boys when you're out. I can't even fathom that. It's 100% full-time job because you are the underdog. And if you screw up, boom, there's the reason that we need to get rid of Kelly, And I never thought of it that way because the guys, here's the difference, okay? The guys don't have to worry about the level of intelligence that the girls do because you know why? Because a lot of their strategy depends on politics. There's a lot of politicking with the guy and who's in. There's a lot of politics with the guys. With the girls, not so much because the mentality of the sexist people in charge is they're lucky to be here in the first place. So, like, there's not even room for you to politic yourself into a top spot. So, like, that which politicking is a big part of the business, you know that. So, like, that is completely taken away from you guys. So everything has to be physical and has to be mental and intelligence and brains. That I never really looked at it that way before, but with what you're saying, it just all makes sense.
I think that politicking for women is more like just being completely undeniable and indispensable. So it's a different type of politicking, if you would use that word. But for us, it's just making sure that people have to use you in the way that you should be used, and to make sure that they have to take notice of you, and they have to recognize your value, and you have to recognize your own strengths and weaknesses. And that's why for me, I'm always in training looking at, okay, what are my weaknesses? What am I struggling with? And I have to master those things, because I can't just get away with sticking to just the things that I'm good at. I cannot ever have any chink in my armor and have anybody have an opportunity to point out any reason why I'm not as good as someone else, or why I shouldn't be there.
Kelly, I have to ask you a couple questions that I'm not too sure about, but I want to get my facts right. Now, I went on, like I said, I was researching you. I saw a Tough Enough video. But was that a video you submitted? Were you ever part of Tough Enough?
I was not part of Tough Enough.
Now, but you were a part of the Gut Check Challenge at TNA?
Kind of.
Well, tell me about that.
So I attended with my husband at the time a gut check tryout camp, and I really went because he wanted to go do it, and I said, okay, I'll go do this as well. And at that point, he and myself and one other person were pulled aside, and they talked to us and kind of expressed that they were watching us and they were interested. But after that, there wasn't nothing else really happened until they launched that gut check challenge, where basically the extent of my involvement in that was that they had the brackets, and everyone who had attended those gut check camps were listed to get votes, and then they would choose who would go on. So it was really, I attended a seminar, which I learned a lot. D'Lo Brown was running it, and I really got a lot out of that, really learned a lot from him. But then it was just, I was kind of standing by as that challenge was going
Kelly,
on.
I got to tell you something, and this is going to segue into where I wanted to go before. And this is where wrestling has changed, and this is where they're missing the mark. Listen, I'm just going to say this, and it's not D'Lo. D'Lo doesn't set these things up. D'Lo is a coach. D'Lo is a good friend of mine, but I'm just going to say it, and you don't have to comment on it. It's okay. I'm going to say it because I know it for a fact. Anybody watching this, if you want to break into the business, I'm going to tell you as a fact, these camps where they're looking for talent are the biggest scams on the face of the earth. This is a way for the promotion to make extra money and charge, a young talent to come in with all the hopes and dreams. We're going to look at you and blah, blah, blah. It's a scam, okay? It's how they make money. You don't need to comment on that, Kelly. I said it. I'm not holding you responsible. But
I will interject, though. That is why I call it, I looked at it as a seminar.
Yeah. Yes.
Because yes. I agree, with what you're talking about, and not from me knowing, but I thought, what, if nothing else, if I choose to go to this, I'm going to learn everything I can while I'm there.
But Kelly, here's the problem, man, and this is what's missing in wrestling today, and this is not Vince Russo's opinion. I am telling you based on, expertise and experience and knowledge. You're sitting here talking to me. And okay, now I know, I read in the notes, Kelly did a TNA gut check, okay? I'm having this conversation with you, and I'm sitting here and I'm saying, okay, how did they miss this? How did they totally miss the boat, on Kelly? How could they first, see, here's how it works. First of all, we see somebody, listen, obviously the first impression is looks. Okay, so we see somebody like you that's beautiful, that is an athlete, put together with a phenomenal body. That's the first thing that we see, okay? There's a lot of people like that. But this is how the weeding out process should work. There's a lot of people like that, okay? Step number 2. You've got to take this individual and you got to sit them down and have a conversation with them. And literally anybody with half a brain, anybody that knows talent, anybody that understands talent, within 5 minutes of that conversation, here would be me. If I'm talking to Kelly for 5 minutes, our first 5 minutes, I'm sitting there and you know what I'm saying to myself? She gets it. And to me, the most valuable wrestler is somebody that gets it, that understands it, that knows it's a business, that is willing to do whatever it takes, that isn't going to whine and complain. I know that within 5 minutes. And, that's the part where, they are just so totally missing the boat because nobody sits down with you people and talks to you and gets to know you and can really make an educated a decision on, what, does she have what it takes? Because I say this all the time, Kelly. The number one thing is intelligence. That's the number one thing. And I tell people this all the time. I worked with Rock. It's no mystery why the guy went from, one of the greatest wrestlers on the planet to one of the greatest movie stars on the planet. You know why? Because he was smarter than everybody else. It's that simple. If you knew Dwayne Johnson, you knew he was smarter than everybody else. And intelligence is everything, in this business. But I want to ask you this because this you're the perfect person to have on this show who's half entertainment, half wrestling. Okay? You're working for Ring of Honor now. Right? Mm-hmm. Let's take a minute. Let's put over Ring of Honor. I know they signed a new TV deal. I'm sorry, but the station just kind of escapes me. Tell me a little bit about Ring of Honor, your experience there, where they're going to be now at the beginning of the year.
So I am part of their Women of Honor program, which is something that they did years ago when they had a really great talent pool of women, and now they're obviously seeing that there are a lot of women out there who are we're working hard. We are all very different, so I think they saw that this was a good time to bring that back and sort of relaunch it. So that's what I've been working on with them, and I did go attend one of their tryout camps this past summer because I knew that they needed to see how I work and how I train and what my drive and my work ethic is. You can see a match and see okay, this is a promo and this is a match I did, but there's not an opportunity unless they're there training with you to see how you train, how you react to criticism, how you make adjustments and take direction. And, one of the buzzwords, are you coachable? So that was something that I feel showed them that maybe I think that they knew who I was. I think that they had some ideas for me before then, but then I went and I showed them that I could implement that.
Kelly, I got to interrupt you again, and I want you to go on. But I have to ask you this. When you say to me, are you coachable? How do you here's one of the problems I think is wrong with wrestling today. Okay? Everybody is too coachable. Everybody is yes, sir, no, sir. I'm going to do whatever creative tells me to do because I'm happy to have a job. I'm not going to rock the boat. Even if I think it's lousy and horrible, I'm going to go out there and do it anyway. Coachable to me is, okay, we're going to keep you inside of this box, and we're going to mold you into what we want you to be. Now, here's the issue I have with that. I worked for lunatics. I worked for people that were totally uncoachable, but because they were unique and because there was nobody like them, they became the biggest stars in the wrestling business. Listen, I just had a conversation a couple of days ago with Shawn Michaels. and I probably worked more closely with Sean than anybody else. Nobody on the face of the planet was going to make Shawn Michaels a puppet. I witnessed Shawn Michaels tell Vince McMahon, F you, right to his face. I mean, I saw it. But because Shawn was this way, and he had this personality, that's what made him stand out and was different from everybody else. And I think that's what's missing today. Everyone, is coachable, and they just want to get a job, and they just want to make it to the WWE. So they do and say what everybody tells them what to do. Nobody speaks up. And now when you watch a show like the WWE, it just comes across as everybody is the same. And, they're all saying the same things because the same writer is writing their verbiage. Nobody's ad-libbing. Nobody's getting their personality across. What you say was very important. Nobody is the emotion is missing. So, you having been in theater and entertainment, I think coachable is a very dangerous word. Coachable to me means fall in line. I mean, do you hear what I'm saying? How do you feel about that?
I understand what your perspective is on that, but that's not what I see as the meaning of coachable. I think of it as a guide, and I'm coming too from having coached softball, coached dance, coached theater, and coached voice, singing, and I do very much focus on the emotion. So to me, when I think of myself being coachable as a wrestler, it's what do you want out of this segment? And how do you want the people to feel in general? How do you want them to feel about me? How do you want me to feel about this person? And then I figure out how to make that happen. So it's not as specific as go do this and do it this way. It's me kind of trying to get into the headspace of who I'm working for and finding out, what they want. Like when I was at that tryout camp, we had some opportunities to have tag match, singles matches, do promos. And in one example is they wanted a promo that would fit into 60 seconds. And they wanted certain key information to get across. And that was it. So I took that and I was able to work within their parameters, but I was able to also do something that stood out and was unique to me and caught their attention. The same thing in a match. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with the fact that I was brought up in theater and wrestling to where I understood the idea of psychology, and it's not about the moves and the sort of paint by numbers. Like my sister was a gymnast, and she had to do these different routines, and she's coached and she's choreographed routines where there are certain elements and certain moves they have to put in. But for me, my goal in wrestling is not, okay, I need to insert all of these moves. My goal is I have to tell this story, whether it's in a promo or in a match, and I have to sometimes fit into parameters. If they tell me you've got 5 minutes for a match because they have TV times, which I know you understand the importance of that, then that's something where I have to say, okay, how am I going to tell this story the best way I can, but fit into their parameters so that they don't lose advertising revenue?
Kelly, I want to ask you this because I'm going to tell you right now, you're the exception to the rule. And I want to ask you this question. Listen, here's my beef with wrestling today. Okay, I saw my first wrestling show when I was 11 and 12 years old. I don't know if you remember them. I mean, you're so much younger. You probably don't. But the first time I put on the television screen, the first vision I saw was the Valiant Brothers and Captain Lou Albano.
I love Captain Lou.
Yeah, and it was a promo. There was no wrestling involved. And I remember sitting there as an 11-year-old kid. My mouth fell to the floor. Who are these people? I want to be like them. They are larger than life characters, okay? Through the years, I don't want to make this long, but through the years, that never changed. From that era in the 70s, Bruno Sammartino and bringing in all these heels that were going to bring him, George the Animal Steel, they were all characters, Then Stan Hansen came, the cowboy. Everybody was a character. Of course, we go to WrestleMania. That's brought to a whole new level with Hulk and all those, characters. Help me with this, Kelly, because I know you're intelligent. Because I sit back and I watch what's going on, and like what I do when I get frustrated is I hit my head against the microphone because I almost busted myself open after the Survivor Series yesterday. But here's the problem I'm having. This is what I need somebody with some kind of intelligence to explain to me. When I look at today's wrestling, okay. It's first of all, they need to change the name because it's not professional wrestling anymore. There are no characters, there are no storylines, there is no pageantry, there is no spectacle. It is not larger than life. Okay, you use the word gymnasts. It has become Cirque Soleil. Now here's the part that blows my mind. Listen, Kelly, a lot of this is my opinion, but a lot of this is documented as well. Like I believe a lot in facts and numbers. I talk in facts and numbers because, quite frankly, nobody's opinion means anything, including mine. The fact of the matter is, if you look at history, MMA, UFC literally took the pay-per-view business away from the wrestling business. Because everybody's mentality became, why am I going to pay for a fake fight when I could pay and see a real one? So slowly but surely, the pay-per-view numbers died, and UFC went through the roof because the fights were real. Okay? Here we are in 2015, and I'm seeing the wrestling business, and I'll be honest with you, with the exception of Lucha Underground. I think Ring of Honor, I think TNA, I think WWE. Jeff is starting up this new global force. I think they all fall under this category, okay? They have put so much emphasis on the wrestling and the moves and the choreography and the spots. And it's literally like, why are we putting the emphasis on the fake fight when the people are going to UFC to see the worked fight, to see the real fight, because they know the fight is worked in wrestling. They know the fight isn't real. Any casual television viewer knows this is a work. Why would you put the emphasis on the fight and the fake match and get further and further and further away what would differentiate you from the MMA and what the wrestling business was built on, and that's great characters with great stories? Why would you get away from that and put the concentration more on the fake fight when there's a UFC out there where the fights are real? And you coming from an entertainment background, I know you know what I'm saying. But you look at the WWE ratings and they continue to go down. I don't understand why this is the main. This is why. Listen, I'm not going to put down a Ring of Honor. This is why I'm not a fan of Ring of Honor. I feel wrestling at something happened where they started taking themselves way, way, way too seriously. Like the fight is real and all these. I was watching Shawn Michaels the other day. I was watching WrestleMania 14. There was a spot in there where Austin, by accident, pulled down Shawn's pants. Okay? His whole backside was hanging out. Shawn went the next 5 minutes without lifting his pants up. So, like, Shawn, like, this is what I mean. Like, today, it would be, like, so serious and, oh, my God, and somehow the wrestling business has is taking itself too seriously and getting away from what really brought it to the dance. Having an entertainment background, how do you feel about that?
Well, I often compare wrestling to the movie industry. I talk about, one of the things I love to talk about is when people like to say, well, wrestling's fake, isn't it? And I say, well, do you ask John Travolta if he was really stealing a nuclear warhead? And I think it was, I don't remember which, Broken Arrow, and it's like, that movies aren't real, but you watch them for entertainment. Now, that being said, if there are things that you're seeing in that movie that take you out of it, whether you see a huge plot hole or there's a bad effect or something, then people aren't going to want to watch that. So there is a balance and a fine line where we can let people know and accept and understand that it is entertainment, and people don't like their intelligence to be insulted. So when they already are saying, no, I know that it's not the same as this, but you're looking at me right in the face and saying that it is the same, then you've alienated those people. So you don't want to alienate them. But it's the same idea as, I'll even use singing as an example. If I were to go into an audition and I were to sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, I am automatically walking in and asking to be compared to Judy Garland. I don't want them to compare me to Judy Garland. I don't want to go and sing a Celine Dion song and have them compare me to Celine Dion. I don't want to go sing a Whitney Houston song and have me be compared to, that's silly. That's exposing yourself. I want to do what I'm best at and do what I can really do well and just have them look at me for me. So that goes to your point of why would we go away from what makes wrestling, and why would we draw attention to the thing that is going to expose it? So I do agree with that. I think there are a couple of schools of thought. One is that, yes, if we are going to do it and we are going to have the competitive part of wrestling, then we have to make it look as good as possible. And that's where my training with Les comes in. I have to make sure that everything is as logical as possible, so that in the example of a movie, there are no plot holes that will make people go, okay, this is just silly. I can't get into this. I can't suspend my disbelief anymore. We have to let them, just as when they watch a movie or a TV show, let them suspend their disbelief, but we have to help them do that, and we have to respect that they're willing to meet us halfway. So if I don't meet them there and I do something that's just completely absurd, then that's just not going to work.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that going on today, but this could be a whole other interview. And listen, you've been on with me now for over an hour, but there's something I got to address here as we close up. First of all, I was reading an interview with you, and I love this line you had. But then I'm reading something else later, and I'm afraid you may be killing the gimmick, so I got to bring it up to you so you can protect yourself and your character. I love this line you had, because it seems like you really have a lot of attitude, and you're very confident and comfortable in who you are, and I love that. And I love you had this one line in some interview where you said, listen, when I say hi to somebody, it's just hi. Don't read into it like it's something I think of immediately guys, and you're just saying hi to a guy, and all of a sudden he gets these illusions of grandeur, and the next thing you know, in his mind you're dating, and I love that. I just love that. When I'm saying hi to you, I'm just saying hi to you, relax, right? But then I'm reading on your Facebook, and I'm very concerned about this. You're a tough female with a great attitude, and I love this. But now I'm reading on your Facebook. Did you start working for Mary Kay Cosmetics?
Yeah.
Yeah, but now you're not going to be driving one of these pink cat. You can't have an attitude and drive.
Oh my God, I hope so.
Well, you can't have an attitude and drive a pink Cadillac like that.
Well, just to ease your concerns, they do offer
black,
just cash.
Okay, you're going to take the cash?
I will take the cash.
You'll never be seen driving a pink Cadillac.
I can't imagine
Okay.
I'll drive a pink
because
Cadillac.
all this hard work, I don't want you to kill the gimmick with driving a pink Cadillac. You know what I mean?
But at the same time, have you heard that phrase, real men wear pink? So I dare somebody to come up and ask me about my pink Cadillac.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Listen, how can people follow you? You know, and first, you know what? You how come you need a Wikipedia page? Why is there no Wikipedia page on you?
And nobody made one. I guess I'm not cool enough.
We
I
got
don't
to
know.
get somebody to make a Wikipedia page. But where can we follow you? I know you do the Facebook, the Twitter. Give me your Ring of Honor plugs, everything that they're doing, where you're going to be appearing. Tell me all that.
So definitely my Twitter is @WrestlerMEM, because I haven't figured out if there's a way to change that Twitter handle. But if you just search Kelly Klein, then it'll pop up there too. I also am on Facebook. If you go to facebook.com/Wrestler Mary Elizabeth, that would be my my page where right now I think I've got, you can't add me as a friend, but you can follow me on there. There's also a like page on Facebook that's /Wrestler MEM. And then I've got Instagram that is Wrestler Kelly Klein. So those are all places where I try to, keep everything up to date, let people know what's coming up. And then if you go to ROH Wrestling, that has all of the upcoming events. I know that there will be some Women of Honor events coming up. So that's not anything that I have a specific date for yet, but that's where that information will be available.
Yeah, and I'm excited about that. I love that. You know, it would be cool. I know there are a couple of women groups. I know there's the Shimmer and the Shine, because I talked to a lot of girls. Man, it would be cool if, the Shimmer had their girls, Shine had their girls, Ring of Honor had their girls, and there was some inter-promotional. I mean, I think that would be really, really. I've said this all along, Kelly, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. And again, this is based on fact and not Vince Russo's opinion. When I was booking at TNA, the knockout matches were outdrawing the guys' matches. And, nobody wanted to hear that. Nobody wanted to see that. When I was in charge, it got to the point that I was like, screw this. I'm putting 2 women's matches on the show because the girls outdraw the guys. There is no doubt in my mind whatsoever. If there was just a women's promotion on TV, I'm telling you, it would outdraw any other, male-dominated professional wrestling organization out there. That's a fact. And it blows my mind that, every, GFW, everybody's trying to start these wrestling groups, which, what's really going to be different? But nobody's going out there with, the strong, attractive, intelligent women. It's just a no-brainer to me. I can't understand why somebody with money and with backing isn't doing that.
Well, I think that right now is a very good opportunity. I think that there is such a great community of women out there who are really working hard, sharing the same type of philosophies about just hard work and just bringing a new attitude to women's wrestling. I think that people are starting to take notice and sort of change their long-held opinions about what women's wrestling is. And I think that there are starting to be more outlets and more platforms for wrestling where they're going to have to be able to see that there is a need and a desire from people to feature the women. And I'm hoping and I really believe that through Ring of Honor, I think that Women of Honor is going to really provide that platform, and I think that can really blow up and expand. So I'm very optimistic and excited about this next year.
And I applaud them. I love the idea of the Women of Honor. I think that's a great idea. I applaud them. I look forward to seeing it. Listen, Kelly Klein, thanks for joining me today. I hope it was painless. I think we had a really good discussion. Now I know you a little bit. I can call us friends. But thanks for joining me today here on the interview.
Thank you so much.
Okay, listen, I'm going to wrap up. I don't want you to go anywhere because I just want to personally thank you when I'm done. But, there you have it, everybody. Kelly Klein, you could follow her on Ring of Honor. And, Women of Honor, to soon follow. She gave you the Twitter address, Facebook. Follow her. and I'll be right back here next week with the next edition of Vixens Who Rule. Thanks for joining me.
Pro Wrestling's history class is now in session with Back to the Territories. Join host Jim Cornette and J.J. Dillon as they explore Mid-Atlantic wrestling.
Sitting there with his hands like this was Jim Crockett Sr.
3.5 hours of wrestling history told through rare memorabilia and exclusive footage.
Nothing topped Wahoo McDaniel and Johnny Valentine.
Featuring over an hour of lost Mid-Atlantic film footage from Jim Cornette's collection.
The kid from Minnesota, it was going to be something, Ric Flair.
Head back to Mid-Atlantic Wrestling at shootinterviews.com.